The 2024 Yamaha Pacifica Standard Plus is an excellent guitar, and I personally think it's a great take on a modern-leaning HSS Stratocaster type of instrument. It's versatile, it feels great, it plays really well, it looks fantastic too, especially in this ash pink finish, and you've got these awesome Rupert Neve co-designed pickups as well, so it's a really great instrument. But the natural question for anyone who's thinking about getting one of these in 2024 will be, why not just go with a Fender Stratocaster? And that is a very, very legitimate question, because the Pacifica is a take on a Stratocaster double cutaway style of guitar. And of course, Fender make many of those themselves as well. So which one should you get? Well, hopefully I'm going to help you answer some of those questions in this video, because I'm going to be comparing the Yamaha Pacifica Standard Plus against these. My 1993 Fender Japan Stratocaster in the traditional 3 single coil pickup operation, and this, the 2011 Fender Modern Player HSS Stratocaster. Now these of course are not modern Fenders, you'd have to buy these secondhand if you wanted them, but what we have here are a very traditional Fender Strat and a much more modern leaning HSS Fender Strat, so I think this is going to be a great three-way comparison. Now what I'm going to do in this video is first tell you about the specs and the features of the 3 guitars, then we'll play them together in as many different musical styles as we possibly can, and at the end I'm going to give you a few more of my in-depth opinions about all 3 guitars, and which I think might be worth your money most of all at the end of the day, so stick around for that. But first let's start with those specs and features, and we'll dive right in with the Yamaha Pacifica. When the new Yamaha Pacificas were launched at the 2024 NAMM show in January, I think a lot of people were quite taken aback by the prices. There's a Japan-built Pro model, which will set you back over $2,000 or euros, and there's this, the Standard Plus, which will set you back about $1,350, 1,250 euros, or thereabouts. It comes with a fantastic chunky gig bag, so that's a plus, but this is going to be comfortably the most expensive Pacifica guitar that most of you watching this will have ever tested, and me included in that as well. So I had high hopes for it, and as you've probably seen from my dedicated video of this guitar, which you can watch after this, it's a lot more detailed than this one is going to be. Well, I really, really like this instrument, and I do think it offers great value for money. What do you get for that money then? Well, in this case, we've got an ash pink finish. Other finish options are available, as are rosewood and maple fingerboard options, and we've got an older body here. We've got the 3 Neve-designed reflectome pickups in HSS configuration with a 5-way switch, master volume control, and a master tone control, which I can pull up to split the bridge humbucker. We've got a Goto bridge here as well, and if I flip us around to the back there, you can see this really nice double cutaway operation, a slightly new evolution of the Pacifica body for those of you in the know as well. Moving up to the neck of this guitar, and we have a rosewood fingerboard on this one, and the neck itself is maple. It's a really nice satin feeling, slim to medium C-shaped maple neck. Feels really slinky, really smooth, really easy to play. We also have 22 medium stainless steel frets on this guitar, a scale length of 25.5 inches, that's 648 millimeters, a la a Stratocaster, and we have a 13.75 inch fingerboard radius, making this really flat, and it aids in terms of the modern playing feel of this guitar. Moving up to the headstock, and we have 6 inline Goto locking tuners as well. So this is the 2024 Yamaha Pacifica Standard Plus, and now let's take a look at the 2011 Fender Modern Player HSS Stratocaster in comparison. And this is my 2011 Fender Modern Player HSS Stratocaster. This guitar originally came in Silverburst with a black scratch plate, but the previous owner put this rather natty silvery tortoise-shelly option on as well. I do have the black one, and I'm going to put it back on later for that full Silverburst effect. But this is a very much modern-leaning Fender Stratocaster, in line with the modern player philosophy. That was a really cool range. It was the most affordable Fender range out there, came out in 2011, and disappeared fairly quickly, and lots of the guitars were sold off at very discounted prices. You could pick these up for $300 or $400 or something like that. They'd cost more today to buy them used, but they were great value for money guitars with some pretty cool specs, as I'm going to reveal to you now. Underneath this Silverburst finish, we have an older body on this guitar. If I flick us over to the back there, you can see that the Silverburst extends to the back too, and it looks really, really expensive considering the price. We've got an HSS pickup configuration here, and they're Fender Modern Player pickups. 5-way switch, volume, tone control 1 and tone control 2, which is actually push-pull, and you can use that one to split the bridge humbucker here as well. Fender's own hardware on the rest of the guitar. Again, one more look to the back and that rather lovely silver burst color there, and you can see here at the back that we've got a vintage tinted maple neck and a rosewood fingerboard on this guitar. There's 22 jumbo frets and we have a fingerboard radius of 9.5 inches. Like I said, a vintage maple tinted neck on this one, so it looks kind of cool, but it's not quite as sleek as the Yamaha Pacifica, and it's a thinnish to medium D sort of a shape, so very comfortable. Everyone's going to be able to play this one with no problems whatsoever. And there you see the vintage tint on the Fender headstock with Fender's own tuners there. So this is the modern player HSS Stratocaster, maybe comparable to something like the modern day Fender player Stratocasters, something like that in terms of quality, at least in my experience. And now let's go more to the vintage side of things and look at my 1993 Fender Japan Stratocaster. And this is my 1993 Fender Japanese Stratocaster. I haven't owned this one from new either. This is 30 plus years old and presumably has had a bunch of owners in that time, but I bought it off a good friend who also works in the industry. He bought this guitar when he was over in Los Angeles for the NAMM show a few years ago. He loved it, brought it back to Europe, swore that he would never ever sell it, and I always told him, look, if you do end up ever losing your mind and you do decide to sell it, call me first. And one day he lost his mind, called me, and I bought it, and the rest is history. And this is kind of my Strat. I've never really been a huge Strat person, and this is the one that's always attracted me whenever I see it to play it. I just love the Lake Placid blue and rosewood neck and the vintage look to the rest of it. It is a fantastic guitar, and I'm never getting rid of this one. Maybe until I lose my mind like the previous owner and decide to sell it. But anyway, what do you get for your money if you decide to buy an early 90s Japan Stratocaster? Well, in this case, you get this beautiful Lake Placid blue finish, and under this one we have an older body. At least we're pretty sure it's an older body. We have most of the provenance for this guitar, and it's mostly original apart from a couple of things, including the pickups. Now, the pickups on this guitar are Fender Custom Shop Texas Specials, 3 single coils with your standard 5-way switch, and a previous owner has also installed an Emerson treble bleed kit. So we have the volume control, 2 tone controls there as well, and a standard Fender bridge there. Over to the back, beautiful Lake Placid blue. You just can't go wrong with this color, can you? And we're moving up then to the maple neck, which is finished in nitro lacquer. Feels really satin, smooth, massively well played in. Just feels like an extension of my body when I pick this guitar up. And this is a more vintage feeling neck than the other two because it has a 7 3/4 inch fingerboard radius while having the same 25.5 inch scale length. We also have 21 frets on this guitar, and these are going to be smaller, medium sized frets too. And up at the headstock, again, your standard early 90s Fender Stratocaster look with 6 inline Fender tuners. So this is the 1993 Fender Japanese Stratocaster. In terms of prices for one of these, you're probably going to pay between $700 and $1,000 or euros, depending on how lucky you get. That's kind of the price ballpark that I paid for this one. And like I said, I'm never going to sell this one, so don't even ask in the comments. But this guitar, being an early 90s Japan SSS Stratocaster, is very much a traditional type of Strat, and therefore pretty much at odds with the HSS Fender Modern Player and also the 2024 Yamaha Pacifica Standard Plus. So what we're going to do next is play the 3 guitars in as many different musical styles as we can to hear how different they sound, how similar they sound, and well, which one is going to sound best to your ears. Now, my rig for today is going to be my Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 amplifier. We'll utilize a couple of the amp's different channels along with a couple of drive pedals as well to get some different spicy tones going on, and we'll play everything I can manage from the cleanest of classic cleans all the way through to some down-tuned modern metal stuff using my Rev G3 distortion pedal. Now, if you want to skip to your favorite musical genres, you can check out the timestamps down there. They will guide you to the places that you need to be. But enough talk for now. Let's play the 2 Fender Strats and the Yamaha Pacifica, and we'll speak in a bit more detail about them afterwards. Okay then, so that was the 2024 Yamaha Pacifica Standard Plus up against two different Fender Stratocasters, and I hope you enjoyed the playing and the tones. Please leave me a comment down there telling me which of the three guitars you preferred. Did you love those Neve Reflectome pickups in the Yamaha, or are you more of a traditional Strat type person? I really look forward to hearing what you guys think, so let's get a bit of a discussion going. But what I'm going to do now is give you my thoughts and my opinions and my thought process on which of these guitars I might be looking at if I was in the market for a Strat or an HSS Strat at this moment in time, and whether or not I'd go for the Yamaha or one of the many Fender options. So we'll go through the different categories that I think you might consider if you're looking for a new guitar like this. And the first one is going to be totally personal and subjective because it's looks. When you're in a guitar store and you're looking for a new guitar, it's the eye catchers that you want to take down from the wall and play them. Well, all three of these guitars look fantastic. I'm a big fan of the Strat aesthetics overall. Now, for me personally, I can't ever go wrong with Lake Placid Blue and a rosewood fingerboard. So for me on looks, the 93 Fender Japan Strat wins that. However, the Yamaha Pacifica 2024 model does also come in a sparkle blue version with a rosewood board. That one looks almost as good. It's a fantastic looking instrument too. And the Fender Modern Player, well, that's a silver burst, and that's a super cool color for a guitar as well. I really like silver burst. I'd love a Les Paul and also an SG in silver burst. But this Strat is my first foray into that colorway, and I'm very happy with it. And I'll be even more happy once I get the black scratch plate on there. When it comes to colors though, with Fender Strats, there are so many different options. Rosewood, maple fingerboard options, different colors that you can go for as well. So you really can pick the one that floats your own personal boat there. But for me personally, I'm giving the win in the looks department to the Japan Strat. The next thing that you would look at, I think, would be the price. And well, for $1,300 or 1,250 euros, the Pacifica Standard Plus is not a cheap guitar, and it's in a very competitive sector right now. It's priced closely to the Fender Player Plus series of Strats. In fact, it's slightly more expensive than the Player Plus guitars, and it's significantly more expensive than the Fender Players. In fact, it's probably priced pretty closely to something like the American Performer series, which is the most affordable American Fender range that you can currently buy. And then, of course, you can buy second-hand used American ones for similar sorts of prices. So it's not a cheap guitar by any means. Now, you can't really compare the two Fenders that I have here in terms of a direct comparison with prices. The Modern Player cost about $450 when it was new, I think. It'll cost you a little bit more to buy a used one these days, but still significantly cheaper. And for a Japanese Strat from the 90s, well between $700 and $1,000, depending on the seller and depending on how lucky you are on the day that you choose to buy one. But I don't think we're going to mark a winner in terms of price here. Just rest assured that I do believe that in terms of the price, the new Yamaha Pacifica is very much worth the money and should be on your shortlist if you're looking for a new Strat type for around $1,000, $1,200, $1,300, that sort of ballpark. Now, the next thing that I think we would look at would be the build quality of the guitars. For this sort of a price point, you want pretty much everything to be perfect. And with these three guitars, well, again, it's going to be hard to measure because this guitar is over 30 years old. It's had multiple owners, the neck's been off to ship it across the Atlantic at least once or twice, I think. And because of that, it's had some great techs working on it over the years, and it is in fantastic condition. So no questions about the build quality of this one. It's beautifully worn in and it plays like a dream. So in terms of the build quality, absolutely no problems whatsoever. And it's the same thing with the Modern Player. I mean, that guitar is coming up on 13, 14 years old, and the guy who had it before me had it as his main gigging guitar for over a decade. So it's a much loved guitar as well. It feels really played into, and the build quality is really very decent. For around 350, 450 new back in the day, well, you can kind of compare that against current Squier Classic Vibes or something like that. And I think that the Modern Players stack up very well in that regard. I do have to say that when I got the Modern Player out of the case to make this video, I realized it does need a setup, so it will be getting one of those as soon as I've finished this video. But anyway, in terms of build quality, where does the Yamaha Pacifica Standard Plus stack up? Well, for me, very well indeed. Now, it does cost significantly more, 1,250 euros or $1,350, but you get an awful lot for your money in that regard. I did mention in my previous detailed video about this guitar that I did have to tweak the truss rod slightly, just because I had a slightly dead fret on the 6th fret of the high E string, but the Yamaha guys trusted me to use the spoke wheel truss rod, which is very easily accessible down at the body end. I gave it a quarter turn and I was totally fine. Now, in terms of the rest of the build quality, you get those great Goto locking tuners and the Goto whammy vibrato bridge. You've got the Rupert Neve co-designed pickups, the Reflectone HSS pickups, which are fantastic too, and the rest of the stuff is Yamaha quality, which is always going to be really decent. Don't forget, for your money as well, you also get those stainless steel frets, which are never ever going to wear out. So I think it's pretty decent value for money. And when you rack it up against the modern day new Fenders that you can buy for that sort of price, it's definitely highly competitive. So definitely worth a look in that regard as well. After the build quality, I think the next thing we would look at would be the playability, and that's going to be a highly subjective and highly personal thing. Again, now I'm holding in my hands the 93 Japanese Strat, and this is a much more vintage feeling guitar to play. It has a slimmer 62 profile neck, and it has this beautiful nitro finish on it, and the 7¼ inch fingerboard radius along with the smaller frets too. That's great for the kind of chordal playing that I do, but I know that more modern players, people who are playing fast leads and legato licks and stuff like that, would prefer a flatter fingerboard and probably larger frets as well. But this guitar is very, very comfortable and easy for me to play. The rest of it is typical standard Strat stuff. You'll have also noticed, by the way, that I don't have the whammy vibrato arms in any of these guitars because that's something I don't ever really use. So in terms of playability, this guitar is fantastic. The modern player loses out just slightly because of the slight propensity to stickiness with the poly finish on the back of the neck, but it really does play very well as well. And the Yamaha Pacifica Standard Plus plays fantastically. I really like the neck on that guitar. It's slightly slimmer than I was expecting before I got the chance to try one, but I really, really like the satin feel of it, and those medium stainless steel frets along with the slightly flatter 13¾ inch fingerboard radius are just a joy to play. It's a fantastic playing guitar. One other thing that I'd be looking at when buying a new guitar would be the weight of the guitar. I'm always someone who likes a lighter weight guitar if I can find one, and I have to say that unfortunately all three of these guitars are slightly on the heavier side. Now the heaviest of the three is the Yamaha Pacifica Standard Plus. That one weighs in at 3.77 kilograms, which is about 8 pounds 5. So it's not a backbreaker by any means. It's not super heavy, but for me personally, I'd like my guitar to be under 8 pounds or 3.5 kilos if I can get it. Now second in the weight charts, or the middle, is the Fender Modern Player. That specific guitar weighs in at 3.7 kilograms, which is about 8 pounds 3. So just a tad lighter, and you don't really feel the difference at all if I'm being totally honest, but it is a tiny bit lighter than the Pacifica. And the lightest of the three guitars is the 93 Japanese Strat. This one weighs in at 3.65 kilograms, which is just a tiny, tiny little bit over 8 pounds. So it's the best weight of the three. I would still like to shave off just a few ounces, a few grams here and there if I could, but all three of them, being Strats, balance incredibly well. No problems there whatsoever if you're playing sat down or if you're standing up and using a guitar strap. So in terms of playability, it's going to be down to what you think is best. I tend to gravitate either between the vintage feel of the 93 Japanese Strat or the modern feel with the stainless steel frets of the Pacifica, but your mileage may vary there. And the final thing that I think you'd want to look at when deciding between one of these guitars would be the tones on offer. And again, I think we're looking between vintage sounds and modern sounds in this comparison. And if you're someone who likes a vintage voiced Stratocaster with single coil, single coil, single coil goodness, well in this case it's going to be the 93 Japanese Strat all the way. These custom shop Texas special pickups are fantastic for all of the cleaner, more vintage genres of music. They have beautiful thinnish stratty cleans moving all the way up to aggressive honky classic rock tones and some decent dirty hard rock stuff as well. When it comes to the more metal stuff, this guitar sort of checks out a little bit, but it has a beautiful clarity for any high gain stuff that you do want to do. So in that regard, it's a fantastic guitar for all of those vintage sorts of tones. It is very much a one guitar can do everything sort of guitar, but if you want higher gain tones out of a Stratocaster, well of course you go HSS, and that's what these other two guitars offer. Now we'll start with the Fender Modern Player. That one has Fender's Modern Player pickups in it, and I think they're very underrated. I think they sound fantastically thick and fat. They're pretty high output for sure, and they do break up my amp pretty well, but they're really good for heavier genres, as well as being decent for classic sounds too. And don't forget, you've got the coil split on the bridge humbucker if you want to use it for certain things. I don't think that's a genuine replacement for a bridge single coil pickup, but it does work if you want that kind of thin lead pickup sort of a sound. Now for classic stuff, the Modern Player sounds good. It sounds thicker and more modern than the 93 Japanese Strat, and it sounds at home for hard rock stuff, for punk rock, for metal, and those sorts of things. The bridge humbucker has a lot of low end. It's a full, thick, fat, rich, aggressive sounding pickup with a decent amount of clarity to it as well, so it's decent for all sorts of styles of music. Now you can play everything from totally vintage all the way through to full-on down-tuned metal with the Modern Player HSS Stratocaster. Where does the Pacifica fit into all of that? Well, if you've watched my dedicated video about that guitar, I said in that one that it took me a couple of days to get used to the Neve pickups. They're very hi-fi and pristine sounding, and at first they didn't really sound like a Strat to me, and after a couple of days it sort of clicked, and since then I've loved those pickups. They're super versatile, they're crystal clear for pretty much everything. They're definitely not as vintage Stratty sounding as the ones in the 93 Japan Strat, but they are super versatile as well, and being HSS, they do go up and do modern metal sounds really well as well, and the clarity is always there. That's probably the Neve influence. They come from the studio world and they wanted to make the Pacifica pickups just sound as clear as possible for everything. But I've grown to love the Pacifica pickups, and this is definitely going to be a taste thing, which guitar I will pick up on any given day. But like I said, if I'm going for vintage Strat tones, I'll go for this one, and if I want something that can do everything from vintage to modern as well, I'll probably pick up the Pacifica. But don't sleep on the modern player. If you ever see a used one, go and check it out, because they are fantastic sounding guitars as well. And so at the end of the day then, what we have here are three similar looking guitars at first glance, but three radically different musical beasts at the end of the day. And choosing which one to buy is actually quite a tricky task. Now, if I was in the position where I didn't own any of these three, and I had around the price of the new Pacifica Standard Plus, and I was looking for a new guitar, which one would I go for? Well, that is really hard to decide on, I have to say. Now, I would first eliminate the Fender Modern Player. Nothing against the Modern Player, by the way. I think it's a fantastic guitar and a great option. But if I've got the money for a Pacifica Standard Plus, well, I think that it offers everything that the Modern Player HSS Strat does and a bit more, apart from having the Fender logo on the headstock, of course. Now, the juxtaposition to that is the totally vintage vibe, performance, playability and tones offered by something like this, the triple single coil 93 Fender Japan Strat. Of course, you're not going to be able to find a guitar like this in the store to try, but you could try something like a Squier Classic Vibe if your budget's a little lower, or some of the more modern Fender Player and Player Plus guitars. There are going to be more vintage feeling options in the new Fender range, so check some of those out against the Pacifica, and you never know, you might find yourself going more for the vintage sort of a feel or the more modern contemporary sort of a feel. But overall, what you can expect is the rounder neck on this one and the slightly more Hendrix performance as opposed to the more modern day Super Strat sort of performance from the Pacifica. The Pacifica's neck really is a modern feeling one. You've got that slim satin finish and those beautiful stainless steel frets, which are a very different feel to standard nickel frets, by the way, and something that does take a bit of getting used to. And in terms of tones, well, you've got the beautiful pristine quality of those Neves versus these custom shop Texas Specials in this specific guitar, two totally opposite ends of the Strat tonal spectrum, and that's going to be a totally personal choice as to which one you could go for. But in my case, I'm never selling this guitar, okay? This guitar is never going to leave my possession. However, if I was going to be buying one of these three from new and I didn't know about this one, well, I'd probably pick the Pacifica, because it really does offer me every tonal palette under the sun. Any type of music can be played with that guitar, no problem. I love the Goto locking tuners and the Goto bridge as well, and it just offers me pretty much anything I could want from a do-it-all guitar. So in that sense, it's a great result for the Pacifica, but a great result for an early 90s Japan Strat if you can find one of those too. So I hope that this video has answered all of the questions that you might have had about these three guitars, but if there's anything else you want to know, you know what to do. Drop me a line down there in the comments and I shall do my best to answer to the highest of my abilities. And if you're still around, would make my day if you wanted to give the video a like, or maybe even drop a cheeky subscribe on my channel, because that really does help. But that's been it for this video. I've been Rich, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.